Welcome to the Take a Mulligan podcast with your hosts, Brian and Kenny Mulligan. We hope to encourage you not to quit and keep going. If you're at that place where you just want to stop and give up, don't. Second chances can happen. Try again and take a mulligan.
Hey, welcome back to Take a Mulligan podcast. We're so glad you're back here with us. We are journeying into part 2 with our special guest, Kevin Graham. So thanks for joining us again as we continue on his amazing story. And he's going to start sharing about his experience in Afghanistan and some of the amazing things that he's currently doing down there now as well. So we would like to just throw out a little parental warning as some of the content that might be discussed might be a little sensitive for younger listeners' ears. So just want to let you know that.
So that lay dormant for quite a while. And now fast forward to August 31st, right, of 2021. And now Afghanistan falls.
Yeah.
And so that's, I think maybe we'll take it there. We're going to start talking about where we are now and how the village mission kind of grew out of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So so again, from your perspective, what happened in Afghanistan? Again, some of our listeners know, oh yeah, there's something in Afghanistan. So maybe just recap in, a couple minutes, just what happened and then what that led into.
Yeah. So, I mean, this had been brokered for a while that the U.S. was going to leave, right? And so I don't think that you'll find anyone that would disagree with that decision, that it was time for the U.S. to leave Afghanistan. I mean, my God, we had been there for so long, and it was time to go. The way in which it happened, I think, is up for debate, and I think anyone that served there is having some pretty big issues with the way that it happened. And I think that again, I won't make it political because I've done a really good job to kind of stay out of that. But as a military strategist, I find it really hard to swallow that the symbolism of making Kabul the last stand was chosen by the State Department rather than making Bagram, which was the largest airbase in the country and in the middle of the desert, which could have been fortified by, which was already fortified and surrounded by mountains, but also could have had, additional tertiary 4, 5, 6 layers of security so that, we could have spent months getting people in and flown out and close down all the other bases, close down the embassy, and have Bagram be the last place where people flew out of. I can only imagine that was done for symbolic reasons, and so that's disappointing that decision was made. But ultimately, because that happened and because things fell, and then because there's a suicide bomber that wound up closing the airport down early, and all operations stopped there to try to get more people in, we wound up leaving thousands of Afghan allies and supporters and people who had wound up working with us when we were in Afghanistan and risked their lives to go out on raids with us, to get shot at with us. Some of them did get shot and wounded and then got right back in the fight with us. They're still there. And there's no plan for the U.S. government. Again, both sides now have had a chance to rectify this, and neither have to help them get out, right? And so that's where we were left on August 31st, and actually before that, because before that was when the last plane went up, and you've probably seen the video of everyone hanging on that last C5 or whatever it was. So leading up to that, the weeks leading up, I started reaching out to folks that I knew to see if they had gotten into the airport, HKIA, the Kabul International Airport, and if they had plans to get out, if they were going to Mazar-e Sharif or Mez, where they were, if they were going across borders on either side, just to try to get a handle on it. And heard from some, didn't hear from others. And then my son goes to or went to a Montessori school here in the area, before he transitioned to the school he goes to now. And one of our very close family friends is Afghan. She's been here for a very long time, but her brother is, actually, she has a lot of family members over there, but her brother is attached to the Afghan parliament over there. I did not know this until my wife came home one day and said that she kind of pulled her aside for pickup, I think, from summer camp, because he still goes to summer camp there, and said, hey, I've never asked what, Mr. Kevin did, but she's been to the house enough times because we use her to babysit. And of course, I've got the CIA whiskey glass on my bar, and NSA and JSOC this. And so I've got some memorabilia around the house enough for her to know that I've done something, or at least, she thinks that I have friends that have done stuff or whatever. But anyway, she came to my wife with, Joanna, with tears in her eyes, and said, my brother is still there with his family, and he's being hunted because he was part of the Afghan parliament, and he had polio as a child, so he can't walk, he can't do things very well, and he's gonna die. Is there anything that can be done? So my wife came home and said this, and I was like, my God, I don't know. At that point, I had been working with a couple different groups to help folks get into the airport. So I was in this seat right here in the bunker, as I call it, downstairs in my basement, and I was not sleeping anyway. I was helping. I had gotten linked up with a couple groups, Allied Airlift, or the Task Force Pineapple, like I had 3 different monitors going, all with different groups, and then there was another group that started, and really where I was most successful was with a group that we didn't name ourselves, but I wound up getting linked up with a bunch of former folks that we all knew each other from JSOC in the agency, and we knew one of the Marines at the gate, and so we wound up getting about 300 people through the gate, collectively using different resources, and they were showing pictures on the phone, and then the Marine would knew what picture to look for, and they were scooping people in. We were bringing in another through a bus. So I had a small to decent, pretty small role to play in that, but it felt good to just be able to help. And I was working for a company at the time that was using call telemetry data to be able to help with dots and things like that. And so our CEO was great. He's like, hey, use our technology if it can help. So I was kind of able to play a small role in that. So so I was helping anyway with that. And so I was like, well, let me see what I can do. So I got his number. I called him up, and he was in Kabul, but he's like, I can't make it through that crowd and try to get there. So I wound up getting linked up with uh, through other friends that I had. I was like, hey, does anyone know, do we have a trusted contact that's still in the local area that can help me get a guy through the gate? And I got linked up with a Marine through one of my buddies from Fast Company, the 97 and 99, right? The group that we still have reunions with. He's like, yeah, I've got a Marine Corps buddy of mine that's got one of his terps that's still there, I think. Let me link you up. And so within minutes, I'm now talking to someone that's right there in Kabul. And I'm like, hey, I know you don't know me. He's like, no, it's okay, Chief. Like, you've already been vouched for by someone who I do trust. So now I trust you. Like, what do you need? And I told him, I was like, I've got a family, and I'm trying to get him to the gate, and I need your help. And he said, well, my wife and girls are already in Pakistan, and I'm packing my bag right now, and I'm going to go join them. That's my plan. And I was like, all right, well, I'm not going to stop you from that, right? And he's like, well, if you need my help, I'll help you. He's like, this must be important. If you need my help, I'll help you. So this guy was ready to go and join his wife and kids already safely across the border. And he put his bag down. He's like, no, I'm going to stay here, and I'll help you. For someone that he just, like, I literally just met the guy on the phone. Yeah. And so I said, all right. So right then and there, I was like, listen, you do this for me, and I will help you get here to the U.S. I will not stop until you get here. Like, you're now mine. Like, you're I'm going to take care of you now, because I realize it's a big sacrifice. I don't know how long it's going to take. I don't know but like I understand that you've been left behind. Like you're now just consider like you were my turf. Like I'm going to take care of you. And so he said, okay, it's fine. Just tell me what you need. And so what happened was then the gate blew from the suicide bomber. They closed it down. So there's no way this guy's getting into Abbey Gate, into the airport. So Harris, Ahmadzai, which is the name of my new friend that I just met, not only is he now not going to see his family, but he's now taken this guy and his family from Kabul all the way to Mazar-e Sharif, which is a pretty long hike, and it's filled with Taliban checkpoints.
Wow.
Right, so this is a dangerous journey that he's now made, because I've now heard that the State Department is flying in planes to Mez since Kabul shut down, and there may be a chance that I can get them on a plane in Mazar-e Sharif. So they get all the way in there. I find a safe house for them where they can stay. I'm wiring money to Western Union. I'm hiding the family in a safe house. Harris is going to Western Union every couple of days to pick up some money to get them food. We got them hiding in closets because the Taliban is literally coming in and throwing people out the window of this hotel and safe houses and killing them. They're shooting people in the streets. I mean, that's their country now, right? Like they're coming through with a vengeance, and they're finding people and they're just executing them in the streets, throwing them out the windows. Like I said, like it's happening. I'm getting texts from both of them saying, like, I'm scared. Like they just threw someone out the window next to me, next to our room. So, and then we find out that the State Department's not letting anyone on the planes without valid passports, which blew my mind. It absolutely blew my mind that in this environment they had passports, but they expired.
Mm-hmm.
And the new Ministry of Interior for the Taliban, for Afghanistan, is the Haqqani family. Now, if you're not familiar with the Haqqani family, they're like the CIA of the Taliban. The Haqqanis are the ones that held Bo Bergdahl for that whole entire time. He was the army soldier that was kidnapped or wandered off, whatever you believe that happened, and was held hostage for a long time. That was the Haqqani network that held him for so long. The Haqqanis are the ones that kind of orchestrated a bunch of attacks throughout the world. Haqqanis are bad. Haqqanis had the blacklist of everyone that's basically ever wronged the Taliban. So what they were doing is the Haqqanis are basically calling people in to say, hey, your new passport's ready, and walk right through this door, and then they're shooting them in the head.
Wow.
Right? So no one's getting new passports at that time, right? They've mellowed out a little bit because people have basically started to pick up on that, and they said, and the world is now saying, hey, you guys, you're killing everyone that comes in for passports. Like they're finally starting to recognize that, from what I understand. But I mean, they're still executing people. So the State Department's not letting anyone on these planes in Mazar-e Sharif without valid passports. So it doesn't matter if you have passport for every single person and you've got, a pending P1 or P2 or SIV visas or paperwork. It doesn't matter what you have. If you don't have a visa that's current and not expired, you can't get on their planes.
Wow.
So they get all the way out there, and now, we've run out of money because I'm funding this myself. I'm funding all this from my bank account. I mean, we have no money. No one's paying for this. My wife and I made an agreement that we weren't going to touch her money.
Okay.
Right. So she realized at this point I had to look in my eyes where I'm too invested in this. She's like, I'm not going to try and talk you out of this. I know you're now in, and you've made promises and you've made commitments and that. So we have separate money, but then together money, right? Like a lot of couples do. So she's not touching any of her money to make sure, and I'm not touching any of our money for the bills and everything like that. My money gone.
Wow.
Like all the money that I had, my TSP cashed out, my 401k cashed out, all that money, right? Because what eventually happened is that the sister also tells us throughout the next several months that her other family is down in Spin Boldak, which is in southern Afghanistan, which is 10 more people, two families also related, and they're Hazara, so they're basically persecuted. One of them is pregnant. One of them is former Air Force, so he's being hunted also. I mean, it's just unfolds. And she didn't want to tell us that originally because she didn't want it to be too big of a burden. The other brother is in more peril because he was right there in Kabul. But now she needs to ask for help for this because the pregnant one is sick and she's dying because they're drinking puddle water, and she doesn't know what else to do. So now I have to try to get more contacts to try to help them. So this winds up being like a 3-prong operation, and I'm now having to like try to pay people I know to come across the border from Pakistan to try to bring them supplies. We had the delivery of that baby happened by bribing a doctor. We eventually got them into Pakistan, but they didn't have passports, right? So now they're in Pakistan illegally in a safe house that I was paying for. We bribed a doctor in a hospital in Peshawar to basically deliver this baby in a closet. And then we also bribed a driver to basically come get them, and a custodian to open the door of the back of the hospital. So it all happened very quickly, right? The car pulls up, safe house opens, she and her husband get in the car, they go, because we had to do it without Pakistani police or ISI or anyone seeing them, because we didn't want them to ask for their papers or they're done, right? They're delivering people back to the Taliban because they're getting money from the Taliban. Every time the Pakistani police or ISI deliver an illegal back there and it's someone that's on their list and that they can execute, they're getting paid for it. So they're looking for all these people in Pakistan that are there illegally to deport back to the Taliban. So we're trying to do this really quickly. So we get them into the car. They go to the hospital in Peshawar. The door opens up by this custodian that we bribed. They go inside. They get up to this closet or whatever. The doctor's there that we paid off. He delivers the baby. Snip, snip, some drugs. Make sure everything's cleaned off. We've got a picture of them getting wheeled out of there, back downstairs, back in the car, and they're back home. And then the doctor came and visited them like 2 days later to make sure everything was good. And that's how that baby came into the world.
Oh my goodness.
So we got the family that's now, we had to move back from Mazar-e Sharif back to Kabul once we know that they're not getting into the plane there, that we're trying to bounce between different houses and hiding in walls and things like that to avoid Taliban. And now we've got the family in Peshawar. We've got 10 of them there, and we're trying to now figure out how to get them passports that are legitimate. So we paid off a source that we have inside the Haqqani network to get legitimate passports made for them, which costs about $100,000 to do, because the guy's risking his life to do, which had quite a markup, of course. Let's get real about it. But it was a lot of passports, and they had to make them with biometrics and then smuggle them across the border and get them into Peshawar. So yeah, I mean that's it was a lot of money. So my money's tapped out, and I went back to Notre Dame the summer of 22, I think. And I was there for like electives. Notre Dame allows you, once you get your MBA, to come back and take summer electives, and all you have to do is pay for your hotel. You can sit on any class. It's like a nice thing to just come back and keep experiencing that. And so it was my first year after graduating, and so it was a nice kind of reunion. And everyone in my cohort knew what I was doing with Afghanistan, so they were asking for an update, and I was like, yeah, it's not going great. Like I wish I had better news. I mean, they're still alive, so that's good. But it's like I'm honestly, I'm out of money, and friends and family have been great, but right now they're just giving me money because they trust me and they know me, right? So they're like, yeah, of course, we know that you can do this, and this is a good cause. Here's $100, here's $1,000, but I need a partner with like a nonprofit that's going to make this legitimate, so that it's not just me, because most people I talk to, they can't wrap their heads around how I'm doing this from a basement in Reston, Virginia. They don't understand. Like, wait a minute, how are you putting people in the fake bottom of a van and smuggling them across the border in Pakistan and setting up a safe house and getting fake passport. How are you doing that? And so they don't understand that, right? But when you talk to people who have been working with the agency and JSOC and all, then they're like, oh yeah, that we're doing that every day. Like, yeah, of course, that makes sense because you build these networks and it's just about trusted relationships and money, right? That's all.
Yeah.
That's all. So that was my problem. And they're like, well, Kevin, you're here at the University of Notre Dame, Mendoza School of Business. Like, why don't you just create a nonprofit yourself? And then you legitimize your effort. And I was like, oh my God. Like I had been so focused on keeping these families alive and just kind of get money and fun. I had totally lost sight. And I was like, man, and then I started thinking about what's happened in Afghanistan since since the fall, right? The child soldiering, right? The recruitment of children, the madrasas being used for the recruitment grounds, the using them for combat and suicide missions for against the police, and like that's on all that's happening, right? The child abductions, the bacha bazis. Are you familiar with what the bacha bazi is?
No.
Oh Lord! All right, I'll get back to that.
Okay.
Let me finish this on how the village mission was created, and then we'll get into the bacha bazi. So anyway, so like this is human trafficking, like at its core. So I took the village project, like what we were doing with the education mission domestically, and I was like, if I take that piece and now do self recovery assist is what we call it, because what I had heard is that a lot of veterans were trying to start 501c3s and use the word evacuation or evacuation assistance, and they were getting shut down by the government because the government didn't like veterans doing this. They didn't like showing them up. They didn't like I had a couple different sources from within the government say, hey, like the government's getting really pissed off that veterans are making them look bad by going in and getting people out that they can't do. I don't know if that's true, but I do know that I put my request in for 501c3 approval and I got it approved in a month.
Wow, that's
And
crazy.
I know at least 4 or 5 other of my friends that put 501c3 in, and they all use the word Afghan recovery, Afghan assistance, rescue Afghan, something about that, and they never got approved. Still to this day, years later, and they got either outright rejected or just a black hole of nothingness. So I don't know. So what we did, and it's honest, right? It's not deceptive at all. We're not going in there and rescuing people. We're literally telling people like, listen, you got to help yourself. We're gonna tell you how, right? Like we're gonna help you help yourself. And that really is, it's a self recovery assist mission that we're doing, and it right now we're focused on Afghanistan, but the hope is, my gosh, that someday this gets better, and then we have the capability to be able to look elsewhere in the world. I mean, we've already gotten requests from Palestine. There's a Palestinian orphans that have reached out to us saying like, "Hey, they're in danger of being trafficked. Are you able to help?" And there's unfortunately this is just an issue that's it's global in nature, and so it's something that can be replicated. But right now, it's just me doing the operations, and so we're focused on Afghanistan. But that's so I was like, yeah, let's do that. Packaged it all up. It's the village mission now, and submitted for the 501c3. So now we're a private foundation, and we're in our second year now. So 3 more years of that, and then we can apply for the public charity. But we still got all the benefits, obviously, for the charity donations and all that as a private foundation. So yeah, it's good, and really happy that Mr. Harris Ahmadzai is living a fruitful life in California as we speak now. He was our
Awesome.
very first success story. We got him in back to Pakistan. I got him a visa to Turkey in January, of last year. I met him in Turkey, in Ankara. He and his family. We thought that they were going to be there and then be able to come here. But when Erdogan won the elections, he cleaned everyone back out and he deported them back to Afghanistan. So I thought we lost him. I was real scared. I thought we lost him. And luckily, he escaped the Taliban again. This guy's story, I swear to God, I told him, like, if you ever want to write your story down, you could probably make a movie and then you don't have to work anymore. But but that's not in his nature. But yeah, and then we got his humanitarian parole visa approved in November of last year. So he's almost been here a year. And we flew him into Dulles. It was a great welcome, and kept him here in Northern Virginia for a while until they got on their feet, and then got him out to California, and he got a job as a truck driver out there. So he's doing really well.
Wow, that's incredible. So you're really the behind the scenes kind of guy for all this, right? So was there multiple rescue missions that you were part of through all this, or was it just multiple people that you were behind the scenes helping them get to other countries safely over there, all while being in the US doing that? Is that how that all worked for you?
Yeah, so it's all I've been the like the puppet master for all of it. So and that's kind of how we're set up, is to not go over there, and that keeps me in good standing with the government. It keeps me to make sure that I can keep my 501c3 status. And frankly, I have a great network of folks still in Afghanistan, still in Pakistan, that are able to do this, right? And yeah, it allows me to be able to do it from here, and to be able to get the folks that I know on the ground to be able to move people around. And I tell you, the big heroes of our entire operation is a law firm that we've partnered with. It's a really big law firm here in DC that have taken on our cases pro bono, because without them, we'd be nothing, right? Because they're the ones that. So before we take on a case, and we've taken on a new family case just a couple months ago, but before we take them on, one of my stipulations is I won't take on a new case unless I'm confident that we can really see them through, and I can envision welcoming them here in the airport, either here in America or some other friendly country, right? It doesn't have to be here, but if they're okay with going to Brazil, or if they're okay going to Belgium, or like just somewhere safe. But I'm not gonna take on someone if I can't see a clear path to that happening, because I get too emotionally attached, guys. I don't have it in me just to like be like, yeah, okay, let's do it, and then once I do it, then I become personally invested in it, and it's all I think about. Like then I really have a personal responsibility to making sure that they get connected, and they get to where they want to be. And it's why I think we'll always stay small, also because I'm the only person doing the operations part right now. It's me, and then my wife is doing the kind of some of the marketing and fundraising part. But really, what's amazing about her is that once we get the family here to the U.S., then I turn them over to her, and she does the resettlement. So she did an amazing job through Harris when he got here, of figuring out that, because that is really where the battle begun. They got no assistance when they got here, which was just mind blowing. I mean, when they got approved for their visa in Pakistan by the U.S. government, they were like, okay, good luck. Like, there was no plane ticket. We had to pay for the plane ticket. They were like, well, we could give you a plane ticket, but it was going to cost them $6,000, and it was a loan that they had to pay back. I mean, I got them a plane ticket for $1,000.
Wow.
Less than that, actually. It was like three. It was $6,000 for 4 people. They were going to charge $6,000 for one ticket. Unbelievable. And it was like, now you're landing in the U.S. with that much debt that you had to pay the government back, and they were going to fly them to South Dakota. No choice, where they don't know anyone. So now we're going to have to figure out a way to get them here, and they had no housing assistance. They had no food. They had nothing. They had to figure all that out on their own. And when they got out the airport, there was no one there to meet them, right? So like if it weren't for us, like they would have just been all on their own. I mean, I feel so badly for the people that either don't know anyone or don't have an advocate or don't have someone, right? Like I can't imagine the people that that served with us and sacrificed with us and helped with the promise of being taken care of, and then this is what they get if they go through the years of legal that they had to somehow figure out on their own because they don't have a law firm working on their behalf, and then they go to the embassy and then they're approved, and then they actually get a stamp on their passport and it's like the golden ticket. Well, now what? Standing in the middle of Islamabad, Pakistan, and they have to figure out how to afford a plane ticket home and then or to the US, and then they land in the middle of either South Dakota or wherever they can afford a plane ticket to, and they're at an airport with no money in their pocket and no plan and nothing. What happens to them?
Wow.
It's criminal, guys. It's
It
absolutely
is. It
criminal.
is.
Especially when
And
you
it's
compare.
so sad. Yeah, I was just gonna say you're probably gonna say the same thing about the
Yeah.
our border, our immigration status right now. I mean, you got these
Yeah.
people that help the U.S. government that are either going to die over there because of how that ended, or they're going to be left to nothing. And we have this immigration issue coming in where they're getting
Yeah.
treated way better than the people helped our government. It's really sad to hear, and it's you're doing an amazing service. It's incredible to hear what you're doing. It really is.
I appreciate it. It is it's a lot. It's
People need to know more about what you're doing, because I think there's a lot of other people that would help you out, because man, you got a great heart for what you're doing. I really admire all the heart you have to do what you're doing. So how does
yeah,
this take you into the sex trafficking part? Because I know there's still more to the story, of where I know you talked about in the beginning before we got on air, just about how that's another big piece overall of Village Mission.
yeah. So the sex trafficking part is, I mean, again, I was affected by what I saw overseas a lot, right? By it happening in front of me. And then when I started really looking into it, and probably more impactful as I became a father too. But when you really look at the numbers, right? And I pulled some just to make sure I had the current, but they talk about some of these about 28 million people impacted by human trafficking worldwide. That's
Wow.
forced labor, sexual exploitation. 28 million people. That's unbelievable to me,
Yeah.
right? And when you start looking at the business that happens, right? You're talking about 150 billion dollars.
Oh my
It's a
goodness.
business, and that's why you see the cartels making money on it. That's why you see the terrorist organizations that have assumed this as a business. That's why you see the mobs, the organized crime. It's huge. It just and so obviously it's global in nature. But why I wanted to focus on it in the U.S. is again, I started coming into contact with it when I was with the Virginia State Police, and I started going to some of these seminars and discussions. And I was like, well, I'm in Northern Virginia, like we have really high taxes, and this is like a really good school district, and like there's no there's no way. But then I started hearing about some of the stuff that Mariachi 13, like MS-13 was Mariachi, Jesus, the MS-13 gangs are starting to do, or were doing back then, or continuing to do here in Northern Virginia to the high school girls, right? Like they're taking uh, guys or boys, I guess, high school age boys from the gangs that are good looking and putting them in polos and jeans or whatever the cool stuff is that kids wear these days. Probably not polos and jeans, but whatever it is that makes them look like they fit in, and hanging out with, going to where kids hang out after school and befriending, and saying, "Oh, this is my cousin or whatever from out of town," and they're hanging out, and then they go to, "Oh, let's go to my," it starts with just looking at. I mean, these kids are looking at porn now way earlier, right? I mean, even the stuff that's on TikTok is it's crazy. So like, there's nothing that's offensive or shocking anymore. But it gets them in the door to start having those conversations. And next thing you know, now they're slipping them something in a drink, or even just trying something, because kids are trying something early. And so what MS-13 was doing and getting kind of really good at, especially in the Herndon, Virginia area right around here, is that then they were getting a girl completely blitzed and out of it, so she had no idea where she was, and they were bringing in a whole entire gang, and they were riding a train on her, right? And they were filming the whole entire thing. So this is an hour or more of just one guy after another, just doing whatever they wanted to this poor girl on film. And so now but that's not what they wanted to do to her. They wanted to break her in. So now she's theirs, because when she comes to now, she's all taken care of and cleaned up, and they'll be like, "Hey, are you okay?" Like, she's like, "Yeah, this is like, I feel really weird." And then like, "Listen, we're going to show you something, and it's going to like really, really disturb you, but like, you need to see this." And then she gets all upset and like, "Listen, you're going to come here every day after school, and if you don't, we're going to show this to your family, to your church, to your friends. We're going to show everyone this to you. If you come here every day after school, we're not going to show this to anyone. It'll be our secret." So she starts coming there every day after school, and now she's their prostitute, right? Now they charge people to come and have sex with her, and they make money off of her. Now she's theirs.
Wow.
And it's as easy as that, guys. Like that's not uncommon. That's happening all over the country. Like that's the kind of stuff that stuff's happening in hotels.
I was shocked to hear, because I ran into another networking event. There's a couple organizations here in Northern Virginia area of literally helping women get out of the sex trafficking in this area, and it blew me away. And they were like, "You don't realize how high it is around here. I mean, sex trafficking in Northern Virginia is very, very high, and you would not think it. I mean, this area is just so beautiful.
Yeah,
it's so peaceful." That would be the last thing on your mind if this is happening. And even if you bring it up, people are like, "Yeah, I don't think so," because it's too beautiful an area. Everything's fine. And yeah, it's just mind boggling.
Yeah. And then some of the oh, sorry, go ahead, Brian.
I was just gonna say, and it's sad that it's 30. You guys are 30 minutes from DC. Our nation's capital, and this is happening at such a high rate right there, and nobody seems to want to really do anything about it.
Well, and so what happens then is these girls who are, maybe honor roll kids and doing great, they wind up now being depressed, turning to drugs. And then the parents are like, "I don't understand what happened to my sweet girl. Like, what complete character personality change over the last 3 months, over the last 6 months." And now they run away from home. They become addicted to things, and then now they end up in DC on the streets or whatever. And I mean, their lives completely changed because of this one afternoon, and they don't know how to get out, because because they don't want people to see this horrible thing that happened to them, when really it's like, this wasn't your fault. Like, this wasn't
right.
This is a horrible thing that happened to you, not something that you did. But you can't tell that to a 16-year-old girl, right?
Right.
So how are you guys helping with that?
So what we are not doing specifically is, we are not doing anything with victims. We're not doing anything with victims, like hard stop, because that is something that professionals need to do. Like, I'm really clear about that. I don't have a psychology degree. I don't have the victims advocacy background to help with that. I wouldn't even try or know where to start with that. So like, I know some people in that space that I'd love to refer folks to if they have that. Like, "Hey, I know this person." Like, that's amazing. What I try to do through the Village Mission is do the prevention of, right? So really trying to educate hotels to make your place as unattractive as possible for sex traffickers and labor traffickers to not want to use your place. That is my small contribution to this, and places of business to like recognize if one of your employees may be being labor trafficked, right? Which is also happening more common than we think. Like that, if I can play a small role in that, then I think that maybe I'm helping a bit by educating employees, by educating managers, by creating a bit of a liaison between the local authorities and that place of business to be able to say, hey, listen, I've talked to Fairfax County Police. These are the people you can talk to. They don't care if you're here illegally. If you see something and you report it, that's all they care about. Like they're not going to mess with your immigration status if you're reporting that you see something that could be sex trafficking or labor trafficking, like like those kinds of assurances, right? They need someone that's a broker in between that to be able to see that. Or call me. I'll call the police. I'll leave you out of it, right? Like do something if you're that afraid, because we don't want stuff to go unreported, because people are afraid that they're going to get in trouble with their immigration status or something like that. Like that's the worst thing that can happen. But I think the best thing to possibly do, and the small piece that we can potentially do, is to do that education piece up front, to just be as unattractive as possible. Put cameras up, put lights up, right, on motels. Like a little extra money goes a long way. Have, even if it's just, to be able to call in an extra police patrol every now and then, just to have people know that there's someone driving by in your parking lot, right? To be able to have that, so that they don't know, maybe not, but I've seen it come through a couple times. So you know what? Let's choose a different hotel, right? It's just to make yourself as unattractive as possible, and then to be able to know what signs to look for. If you are the cleaning service, if you are the maintenance, if you are, the management, like there's all kinds of signs to look for as people are checking in to identify potential traffic victims or stuff like that's going on there.
Now, is one of your hopes to get into the high schools to educate the kids too?
Yeah, I think so. So the Department of Homeland Security does a great program called NetSmarts, and I've teamed up with them, and so I taught it at my son's school to their parent education, not to the kids yet, but it's really more of like a parent education. And so I've done that a couple times now, and it went really well. And so it's a free service just to go in there and be able to talk to kids, to the parents about, hey, this is what you can look for with online predators are out there. This is what some signs to look for. This is how to talk to your kids about stuff that they may see online that's disturbing, that maybe someone's sending them inappropriate pictures. This is what sextortion is. A lot of parents don't even know what that is, and it's happening at younger and younger ages, right? Because kids are getting convinced, especially girls, are getting convinced to send inappropriate pictures of themselves to people, and then having those pictures used as blackmail. Like those discussions need to happen, unfortunately, earlier in age, and they're uncomfortable to have. And the worst thing a parent can do is to have blinders on and say, oh, I don't need to have that discussion with my kid yet. But if that kid has access to the internet, they're seeing stuff that you don't want them to see. 100%.
Yep.
Yeah.
We could probably go on all night here, boy. This has been amazing, Kevin. I really appreciate what you're doing now. Thank you so much for serving. I know all of us who have not served or just real, we have some great freedoms here. As hard as things are and as bad as things are, we see them. So thank you, because people like yourself who give us that freedom, and so I'm really grateful for you serving. So how can people get a hold of you? We'll put your stuff up in the talk notes and, in the show notes, whatever. But if you want to give email, whatever out, go ahead. Feel free.
Yeah, I think the easiest way is through the website. There's a www.thevillagemission.org. And through that is the best way, because it's got to contact us on the bottom. That goes directly to my phone anytime a submission is sent there. So that is the absolute best way. You can also, if anyone cares to donate, you can donate through that website also. It's all, you get all the tax benefits of a 501c3 through that. You can also read about Harris, his story. He's got a nice little video. And Badria, who's the sister there, she's got a nice little video there also. And a little bit about what we've done, the board members that we have, a little bit about my background. We try to put not too much fluff on there, but enough to be able to know a little bit more about us. But I'm happy to be contacted through there if you'd like to know anything more about what we do, how we can help, and how you might be able to help us. We're always looking for folks to be able to come on board and offer assistance. So I'll take all the help I can get.
And also, would you
Great.
come and speak at places? Is that something you would do too?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay. Okay. Sweet.
I've spoken at Boy Scout troops. They've done donation drives for us. I've spoken at all kinds of events. Absolutely. I'm very happy to tell as little or as much of our story or what's happening in Afghanistan, or do the net smarts to parents. I'm happy to do all that. Anything I can to get exposure to what we're doing is fantastic.
That's great. Okay, so you're on the Take a Mulligan podcast. So give us a mulligan. It could be anything. It could be even funny now after all the serious stuff, whatever you want to do. But what's the time you took a second chance, or maybe a second chance you'd love to take? Like, hey, I wish I would have taken a mulligan, or I want to take a mulligan.
So I thought about that in the spirit, and honestly, I think if I could use this example, and I hope it's in the spirit of what the question is, but I'd like to give an example of when I took a mulligan,
Okay.
and I think when I did, I think the best mulligan I ever took was to leave the government, right? And I say that because what I didn't include in my original story there, when I left JSOC 7 years ago, it was because of the birth of my son.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't retire from the government. I left 7 years short, and I left my pension on the table. And that's a lot of money I left, right? So in the government, you only put in a few $1,000s, and then you wind up getting a lot in return. So when I left, I got a check for like $3,000, which is all the money
Oh my
I
goodness.
put into it. So I left early, but it's because my deployment schedule was, 9 months out, 3 months back, 6 months out, 2 months back. And so when my son was born, um, uh, I missed. I was there for the beginning of my wife's pregnancy, and then I missed the middle, and then thank God I was back for the delivery. But I only made it back by a week, and then my son was
Mm.
born. So thank God I was back for that. Then I had to deploy again, and I missed my first Father's Day. So I missed his first crawl. I spent the first Father's Day in a hut in Africa with a bottle of Jack Daniels. It was the worst day of my life. I'd waited forever to be a father, and I spent my first
Mm.
Father's Day alone. It was horrible. Um, so, but that was again. I think I talked about how difficult that transition was because it was the best job anyone could ask for. If you love your country and you want to make a difference, and saving lives and getting bad guys off the planet and doing all these good things, there's no better place to be than what I was doing. So that decision was the hardest thing I've ever had to make, is to walk away from that life. But I really wanted to be a father, right? Because my dad was the greatest man I knew, and he was my best friend. And I really wanted to be a better husband to my wife. And and there was a long time where I didn't know if I made the right decision, because I was miserable, right? And I was really not a happy person, even though I was ecstatic at home and my personal life was amazing, and I was so happy to be a dad, and I was so happy to be home with my wife more. But professionally, I was miserable, and I thought that for a long time, like, I was never gonna be happy again for both. I was like, well, I guess I'm just gonna hate my job, but I'm going to be a happy guy, but I'm going to hate my job, and that's just the way things are. And it wasn't until, I thank God I listened to my mentor, and I did the whole business thing, got my MBA, and sucked it up, and did this long enough so that when this opportunity came around to where I am now, it all came together, and I have my dream job now. I found it again because I can still help people. I'm still in operations. I'm doing kidnap for ransom stuff, but I'm doing it all from here now, and I still get to be home and do dance parties with my son and take him to soccer practice, and
Mm.
still and have a great relationship with my wife. So, that mulligan of starting this new life almost didn't happen. I almost didn't do it, and I almost was like, I can figure it out. But I really feel like I have this new lease on life
Mm.
that is starting this new chapter, and it's like it's the best. it's just the best thing that ever could have happened.
That's awesome. Well, hopefully that'll encourage other people to take that mulligan.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks again for being with us, and thanks for all those who are listening in. I know it's a little longer than we go on, but it's so well worth it. So thanks again, Kevin.
Yeah, thanks guys, very much. I really appreciate having me on.
You're welcome. Thanks for. We know everyone can use a second chance or a do-over, so take a mulligan and try again. Thanks so much for joining with us today. Make sure you follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube. Like, click, and subscribe.